Hi, I'm Jamie and I'm a parent.
And I'm Glenn and I research video games.
Welcome to this episode of Great Games, Better Brains.
Today we're going to talk about some of the brain research. We've had some people ask about, well, why are games so good for kids and why are kids love games so much? So today we're going to talk just a little bit about brain research and what it tells us about how the brain works when it plays games and why people who play games love them so much.
And is it just about kids or is it the whole spectrum of people?
This is really everybody. The brain works pretty much the same, and there's obviously, we've got 5 minutes to talk about all the brain research in the world. We're not going to get to that. But for the most part, simplified, the brain research that we're going to talk about applies to everybody. And a couple things, just 3 things I want to talk about. One, the brain researchers are telling us that the brains like to find patterns in the world around us. So as a baby, one of the first things that babies' brains start to do is to try to differentiate between mom and non-mom. Who are my parents and who are not our parents? Hot and cold, tall or short, red and blue. As we get older, the brain continues to try to find these patterns, right or wrong, really complex things like democracy and dictatorships. I mean, what are the differences? And so the brain wants to try to find a pattern, a worldview that makes sense to it. One of the other things that we know brains like to do is to socialize. They like to talk with other brains. And so there really is a need for having conversation and collaboration with other people. This is why solitary confinement is such a powerful punishment tool for some people. To put somebody in solitary confinement and shut them off from all human contact is a terrible thing because the brain hates that. And finally, one of the things that I just want to mention about brain research, especially as it relates to video games, is the idea that the brain works best when the brain is flooded with emotional chemicals. And there's a couple chemicals that you may be familiar with. One is called serotonin and another one called dopamine. And when these chemicals are released in your brain and flood your brain cells and the connection between brain cells, your brain works better. You remember more, you're more engaged, you're happier. Life is just better when these chemicals are released. And so it doesn't have to be games necessarily, but these are 3 things that go on in your head, right? What we're starting to find out, and brain researchers are starting to find out, is that when we play games, theme park, for example, all of these things start to happen. The brain recognizes patterns that it already knows in the real world. Oh, I get this. This is a simulation. It's just like a theme park, and they start to see that. Most games today encourage collaboration, working together, online teams work together. And then the whole idea of the serotonin, dopamine, the emotional chemicals, when I play a good game, when I'm emotionally engaged in the content, those chemicals are released automatically when I'm emotionally engaged. And so my brain starts to work better and I start to enjoy these things. And that's why kids like to play games. That's why adults like to play games. So real quick, that's some brain research. I'm curious if some of that makes sense. Have you noticed any games that you play or your kids play that, oh, now I get it?
On Facebook in particular, I play one that's called Sorority Life, and I'm stronger the more sorority sisters that I have. And so I need to keep building up to become stronger, and the more cool clothes I have and shoes and cars and rides, the stronger I am when girls fight me. So I have to get as many.
Play this
game. I have to get as many sorority sisters and as much nice stuff as I possibly can to ward off the evil of the other evil sororities out there.
So there's the socializing part.
Yeah, they're my sorority sisters.
And the emotional connection part. So while you're playing these games on Facebook, you're connecting with other people.
Yeah.
And the emotional chemicals are flooding your brain to protect you from the evil sorority sisters.
Yes, and some people take it way too seriously,
I can believe it.
and they will delete you, or you can actually slap people, and there's non-slapping rules for certain places.
Wow. Okay.
So, I mean, it's too intense for me.
Facebook is a pretty good example of games that are really mini games, but have lots and lots of people play these games.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of connected networks of games, Sorority Life, Mafia Wars,
Yes.
Farmville. Farmville is another one. Those are some examples of the kinds of things that people start to play because that's what your brain wants. Your brain really is looking for those kinds of things, and game developers know what the brain research is telling us, and so they design games very specifically for that kind of activity. Sim does a lot of games, theme park, roller coaster tycoon, all of those things help us start to understand why video games are so loved by lots and lots of people. So really simple brain research. The brain likes patterns. The brain likes to socialize, and the brain works best when it's flooded with emotional chemicals. So the next time your kid says, I love this game, I got to keep playing, I don't want to come downstairs to go to dinner or go with you, whatever, they got to keep playing the game, you start to understand why. Because your brain truly is hooked on these games because that's when they're working their best. So we'll talk more about brain research in future episodes of Great Games, Better Brains, but thanks for being with us today.
For more information, see mykidsturned.com.
See you next time.